we have initiated the debate for long already in Germany. And the answer to that for Germany is what we call in German Energiewende, which means transformation of the entire energy system according to the principles of sustainability. And we heard from the Commissioner for the Environment already the word green economy. And this is, I think, the approach we need to do it in a sustainable way. And so, again, I commend you. Germany is, in its policy, ready to assume a leading role for sustainability and to new international partnerships, to initiate new international partnerships, political as well as on environmental fields of policy. And we want to reach out for other countries who have identified the need to do something in that field. The Nigerian-German Energy Partnership, which was first initiated in a Memorandum of Understanding in 2008 and renewed in last October with a new Memorandum of Understanding signed by Abuja, shows that it also wants to be a partner in that field to Nigeria. For this conference, German experts from GIC and SIM participate in the conference. They will give their expertise to the discussions. I wish you all fruitful debates, good deliberations, and I thank you for the opportunity to address you and your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The Consul General of the German Consulate here at Lagos, Mr. Michael de Rus. We'll also take another good message from the government of the United Kingdom, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, the Deputy High Commissioner, Mr. Peter Carter, is here. Please a round of applause for him.
Your Excellency, Governor of Lagos State, Your Excellency, Deputy Governor of Lagos State, a host of honourable commissioners, experts, ladies, gentlemen, colleagues and friends. Last year, this was one of the first events that I spoke at after my arrival in Lagos, and I was struck then by the size of the gathering and the commitment of Lagos State to address the global problem of climate change. It's an enormous pleasure for me to be back here again this year, to see an audience even bigger than last year's, and to be able to congratulate the Governor and your Commissioners for your commitment and your leadership in climate change, not just for Nigeria, but for the whole of Africa. And I'm extremely grateful for the invitation to participate again this year and to offer a few thoughts from the United Kingdom's perspective. As my German colleague has already indicated, and we've also heard from the Commissioner for the Environment, this is the 6th edition of the Lagos Climate Change Summit. I think this indicates that it has become a real fixture in the climate change calendar and an important event. And again, I'm delighted to be part of that. Climate change is an intimidating subject. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has told us that a 2-degree increase in the world's temperature would be dangerous and 4 degrees would be catastrophic. And indeed, I heard on the radio this morning that the IPCC will be publishing another report within the next few weeks, which will paint an even more pessimistic forecast of what we can expect from climate change. But that is the likely trajectory, unless there is unprecedented global cooperation to bring down emissions. No country would be left unaffected. Governments everywhere have to act. Lagos State is giving a lead to that. Nigeria, as one of the largest countries in Africa, needs to lead the continent in making a positive contribution to international efforts. The simple truth is that the climate is changing for the worse because of human influence. And it is only through human influence that we can reverse that change. We often think of addressing climate change only in terms of the decisions taken at international level. Sometimes we forget that those international decisions must be supported by concrete action closer to home. Of course, that's very easy to say. Taking action is more difficult. Developed countries need to be shaken into changing their long-established patterns of behaviour. This is a difficult task and often an expensive one. The UK is strongly committed to taking action, even where such action is difficult. As well as committing ourselves to reducing greenhouse gas emissions at home, the UK has been pushing to establish tougher international emission targets of the EU and globally. And I'm delighted that the two international speakers who have begun this conference are both EU member states at the forefront of leading the drive towards emissions reduction across the world. We are funneling millions of pounds into money for research into climate mitigation and clean energy development, and offering tax incentives to businesses which invest in green technologies. At the educational level, we're supporting and encouraging universities to educate on environmental issues so that we can produce a new generation of technology graduates with the skills to tackle climate change. We're also working to ensure that new ideas are transformed into the physical tools and methods needed to combat climate change. The UK Technology Strategy Board, through its Catapult Centres, is working to turn research results into commercial products and processes. The centres focus on, amongst other things, future cities, renewable offshore energy, transport systems, and energy systems. These are all topics relevant to climate change and relevant to the challenges faced here in Lagos. Developing and middle-income countries perhaps have a more difficult challenge. They face having to address climate change in environments which are often more fragile to begin with. They have fewer resources and expertise at their disposal. And they're not only trying to maintain their economic growth and living standards, but also catch up with their partners on the global stage. But there is a silver lining. Developing and middle-income countries can benefit from the lessons learned elsewhere. They can introduce cleaner technologies with more advanced systems, building climate awareness and energy efficiency as an integral part of their development. And developed countries like the UK are ready and willing to share the results of the lessons that we have learned with them. The UK and Nigeria have a uniquely close partnership, and we welcome the opportunity to continue to do so on climate change. British scientists, experts in their fields, are ready to work with the Nigerian counterparts. Together they can develop a better understanding of the risks Nigeria faces and develop potential solutions. UK innovators and businesses are keen to work with Nigerian partners to implement these solutions and to help Nigerians access the training they need to do the same. And the British High Commission in both Abuja and Lagos are ready to help Nigeria, Lagos State and the UK work together across all these sectors. We have a strong UK trade and investment team who will be at this conference this week. We also have representatives of the UK Science and Technology, Science and Innovation Network in Nigeria, working to identify and provide opportunities for scientific cooperation between British and Nigerian businesses and researchers. Nigeria is an excellent example of a country which has stepped up to the challenge of tackling climate change. And Lagos is very much leading that change. It's often said that where Lagos leads, the rest of Nigeria follows. And I know that this 6th edition of the Climate Change Summit will only prove that still further. But be in no doubt, the rest of Nigeria, and indeed the climate change community across the world, will be watching to see what you and we can achieve this week. Let's give them something worth watching. Thank you.
Okay, so it's showtime, ladies and gentlemen. We'll give the world something worth watching. Please round of applause once again for all the questions. We also have a few NGOs here and they're supporting, but time will only allow me to take just one. Much later on, we will take as many messages as possible, so I'd like to invite from C40 Cities, the city director, Mr. W. Shigaya, to just say a few words just for 2 minutes, please, if we can.
His Excellency, Honorable Commissioner, all principals, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the City Director of C40 Climate Initiative in Lagos, Nigeria. C40 is a preeminent global organization which has over 6 cities committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and climate risk. C40 helps identify, develop, and implement global policies and programs that have collective global impacts for the cities around the world. Working across multiple sectors, C40 convenes networks of cities with common goals and challenges, providing them with a suite of services such as direct assistance, peer-to-peer exchange, research, knowledge management, and also communications. C40 is positioning cities as a leading force of climate action around the world, defining and amplifying their call to national governments for greater support and autonomy in creating sustainable futures. Lagos is one of our mega cities and a city of very high priority to us, that it can be a flagship of Africa, and we believe are working very closely with the Lagos State government to ensure that this actually takes place. We thank you for the opportunity for us to take part in the 2014 Climate Change Summit, and we look forward to a successful year serving as a technical advisor in Africa's climate change. It will be back.
That was less than 2 minutes. That was Indomie Blues kind of speech. 2 minutes or less. Thank you very much, Mr. Shikaya. Okay, I think we can also take the policy advocacy partnership project and climate change, and their representative, Mrs. Yamsi Ransom. I hope Madam can do 2 minutes as well. But even if she doesn't, we have to be fair to the Beijing conference. So,
Your Excellency, Governor Abassani Raja Fashola, Deputy Governor of Lagos State, the High Deputy Commissioner for the Environment, Section Jibelo. I'm not very well actually, I'm just recovering from malaria, probably climate change. It's very hot. Ladies and gentlemen, our young colleagues, it's your future we're talking about, so I hope you will pay attention. This is very important. That's why, in spite of my illness, I felt I had to be here to be part of this summit. My speech is already in the program, so I won't need to take a long time. But I would like to reinforce the fact that we truly believe in the leadership and the visionary led government of Abassani Raja Fashola. I thank him for continuing to lead the environment challenge debate around the world. I want to thank the Environment Ministry Commissioner, the Ministry of Environment, for involving the Partnership for Climate Change, which I am here representing. They have been working with DFID, the British government, on the climate change issues, and it shows a commitment by the government to involve civil society and stakeholders, an inclusive process that actually leads to development. So please thank them again for us by giving them another round of applause. We think the theme of this summit is really timely because the business of the environment, the greening of the world has already begun, and we must join hands to be part of that process in achieving the MDGs and all the goals of the 21st century that we're trying to put together. But we must have a climate change policy, and I hope the House of Representatives will fast-track that so that Lagos State will again lead Africa in having a climate change policy that is effective and will mitigate the climate change effect in our country. Finally, let me thank all the commissioners, starting from Liz, Banneret to Commissioner Tujibelo, for continuing this process. The British High Commission, the Deputy British High Commissioner said earlier on that the IPCC report was rather depressing. Let me tell you what it actually said. It says it predicts that global warming will cause violent conflict, displacing millions of people and wiping trillions of dollars off the global economy. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously we need to act fast and time is now. I wish you a very successful summit, and thank you for inviting the Climate Change Policy Partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Please a round of applause for her. It's just something that I will bring in and we'll do together. Men can greet themselves from 2 streets away. Guy, how far? That's just something that but I like the fact that the way she referred to His Excellency, visionary, very well. We share, we are both Babatunde, so we share similar attributes. I'm a visionary as well. And I am political will too. And that's why I've done this for 6 years. Because if it's for money, I would have to be doing it, And I'm only saying this before His Excellency comes to talk because I know he likes looking for my trouble. So Excellency, we are not doing it for money. So this is actually a non-taxable event. When IRS is there, they should take notes. Well, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, exploring innovative opportunities and smart solutions in climate change. That is the topic for our lead paper for today. And for the next few minutes, I'll make that appeal before we started. I'm going to reiterate it again. Please, I know that some of you have very, very nice sounding ringtones. In fact, some of your ringtones are enough to start a party. But right now, I will crave your indulgence that you please just suspend that ringtone for the next few minutes. We are now into the meat of the event. Please, everyone, let's put our phones on silent or vibrate as we take the lead paper. I respectfully make this appeal. Thank you. So, I'd like to invite the President of the International Council for Local and Environmental Initiatives, ICLEI, Mr. David Kalman, as he presents the lead paper at the 6th Lagos State Climate Change Summit. Please a round of applause for him.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Your Excellency, the Governor of Lagos, the Deputy Governor of Lagos, Commissioners, distinguished guests, we are at the beginning of the 21st century and at an existential moment in time. We either get onto a sustainable path or life across this entire planet is going to become a lot more miserable than it is today. The 21st century will determine the viability of this planet. Not just for us, the humans that live on this planet, but for all the species that share this planet with us. The astronauts from space looked back and saw this unique blue planet with a very thin atmosphere that protected it. That atmosphere was initially under threat from chlorofluorocarbons, and we found a way through the Montreal Protocol to shift. Now we have to find a way to shift away from carbon emissions. In 1992, at the Earth Summit in Rio, 190 heads of state gathered and said, we have to find a solution to climate change, we have to find a solution to desertification, and we have to find a solution to loss of biodiversity. We gathered again for the 20th anniversary, and we have to be honest. We have not achieved any of those goals. Some states have, but for the most part, globally, we are failing very, very badly. In 1997, the Kyoto Protocol was signed, where the industrialized countries agreed to basically a 6% reduction in their 1990 emission level by the year 2012. Not many states, if any, achieved that. Some have made great headway. I congratulate Germany, I congratulate England, I congratulate Holland. But those places are few and far between. For the most part, we're slipping, and we're slipping badly. In 2009, when the world met in Copenhagen, we had a hope that this would be the venue where finally we would get a global agreement that all states would sign on to. And you know the outcome of that. It fell apart, with the only positive thing being that the nation states said, we will keep our emissions below 2 degrees centigrade. And many people feel that even that is too much. We're already at 400 parts per million carbon in the atmosphere, and we're growing annually. We now have a challenge as we move towards Paris in 2015. We have to come up with a global agreement. We cannot fail again. And even then, if we come with an agreement in 2015, it will only be for implementation by 2020. So we're losing time, and greenhouse gases are cumulative. They keep on growing while we spend the time trying to figure out the solutions. The IPCC has said that not only are we going to miss the 2 degrees centigrade, we're going to overshoot it somewhere in the order of 4 to 6 degrees. We have never seen temperatures 4 to 6 degrees on this planet. Well, sorry, we have several million years ago. And at that time, there was no ice anywhere, and the water level, the ocean level, was 25 meters higher than it is now. So think for a moment, if that's where we're heading, what does it mean for the cities that we inhabit? 2/3 of humanity lives adjacent to the oceans. If we have that kind of sea level rise, we're going to have massive problems, massive migrations of people like we've never seen before. You know the glaciers are melting. And what that means, just to take one example, the Himalayas. That supplies 12 major rivers in Asia. Once you lose that water source, you're going to have very shortly 5 billion people living in those areas that are going to be dependent for that water. So it's time for an agreement. You know that the Arctic is melting. And the bad news is, when the white reflective surface is replaced by a blue absorptive surface, instead of reflecting 90% of the energy, it absorbs 90% of the energy, and the spill-off effects on the land mean that the tundra, the permafrost, is now melting, and the permafrost is now releasing methane that is trapped, that is frozen in that permafrost, and methane is 23 times more potent as a greenhouse gas. So you know that Antarctica is melting. And if the Antarctic melts, you'll have a 6-meter rise of the oceans. You know that Greenland is melting. And I used to be told, you can't say that. No. The IPCC hasn't confirmed that Greenland is melting. Last year, 97% of the surface area of Greenland melted. It is melting. If Greenland melts, you'll see a 7-meter rise of the oceans. This is the consequence that we're faced with. 97% of the water on this planet and the hydrological cycle that it pushes is contained in the oceans. Only 3% fresh water is contained in the ice and the rivers that flow off of that. If we lose that source of fresh water, water is going to become a very, very precious commodity. Since 1992, with a few notable exceptions, we haven't made much progress on climate change. Where we have made progress, interestingly enough, is at the local and subnational level. Today, through Carbon, a registry of greenhouse gas reductions, 1/7 of the urban population is reporting and registering their reductions in greenhouse gases. We need to get all cities and subnational governments reporting and showing what can be done. Many cities are already moving towards meeting Kyoto commitments. Many cities are also moving towards carbon neutrality. We can do it, we can show we can do it. The first thing I think we need to do is take up the challenge of building sustainable, green, resilient city. And this needs to occur now. We need to work with our universities to map your specific region and figure out what has to be done where you are. The water challenge. Obviously, water that comes from the sky, the more we can capture, whether it's in barrels adjacent to houses or whether it's in irrigation systems, the more of that fresh water we can capture, the better, because it's going to become rarer. But the problem is, because the oceans are getting warmer and are giving off more in evaporation, we now have a situation where there's 5 to 7% more moisture in the atmosphere than normal. And what goes up must come down. And so we have episodic pouring down of rain, and the chief meteorologist in Canada said, David, you can't simply describe it as 5 to 7%. You have to talk about rivers of water in the sky that are looking for a place to come down. And I know you've seen that in the north of Nigeria. I know they've seen it in the north of Pakistan. And last year in Calgary, Alberta, we had 5 times what they thought was their 100-year episodic rain. So this is going to be the future we're going to face. We have to begin to change mobility patterns. I came in here from the airport and saw the traffic going out. And what was interesting is I looked a little bit beyond that and I saw a rail line sitting there. I thought, my goodness, why isn't that rail line being used to move these people back and forth? The opportunity of mobility, we have to seize those opportunities. And we had a situation in Vancouver, where I come from, where the rail line said, no, we want to develop that. We said, no, it is and will remain always a rail line. And we're going to eventually use it to move people if you don't choose to use it to move freight. We need to move towards a society that is built around walking, cycling, and public transit mobility. The single occupant vehicle simply cannot survive in the 21st century, both for the emissions that it gives off, but more importantly, because you can't make bigger roads. In large metropolitan areas, what you get is a defined space that just becomes more and more congested. And even since I've been here, I've heard people who are commuting 3 hours to work in the morning and 3 hours home in the evening. 6 hours. Somehow, all of us, everywhere, have to find a way to increase that mobility. Land use planning. Currently, 52% of the world's population lives in cities. By the middle of this century, 75% of the world's population will live in cities. By the end of this century, 90% of the world's population will live in cities. Simply put, the way we plan those cities is going to be critical to the way that they function or don't. So, land use planning is going to be absolutely important. We're at about 7 billion people on this planet now. We're heading, we think, towards 10.5 billion. What's interesting is the mix. Of that 10 billion people, only 1 billion or 10% will live in Europe and North America. Another billion will live in Latin America, 3 billion will live in Africa, and 5 billion will live in Asia. The future of sustainable life is going to be determined here in Africa and in Asia. These are the places where the growth is taking place. In land use planning, we need to look at where are our watersheds, where do we capture water, and how do we protect them. I had a very interesting discussion in Sao Paulo, where they were looking at putting in a very expensive water treatment facility. And I said to them, go and look at New York City, see what they did. New York, rather than build expensive treatment facilities, they bought up the watershed and had natural biological filtration by nature. And that's what they're now doing in Sao Paulo. So keeping water clean is absolutely critical to avoid the costs of having to treat that water in the future. Obviously, agricultural areas. If you lose your agricultural areas in the urban or peri-urban area, then you're going to be importing your food long distances. So making sure that you have the ability to produce food close to where the consuming population is absolutely important. Maintaining forests, and I applaud the state of Lagos for the reforestation projects that they've been doing. This is what needs to happen everywhere. The built world. In the next 40 years, we are going to build more on this planet than has been built since time immemorial. If we don't build that wisely, if we don't build it energy, water efficient, then we're going to have a problem for years to come. We need to absolutely make sure that everything that we build is as efficient as it can be from an energy perspective, from a water perspective, and from a proximity to the people who have to access that building. Food. Producing food locally is the way to go. And that's not the way we do it in North America. In North America, the average piece of food travels about 3,000 kilometers to get to your plate. But with energy costs going up, that is going to be, simply put, unsustainable. With California going through a drought this year, we're going to see those food prices spike. And that's going to spur people to produce more food locally for local consumption. And we've done that in Vancouver. But there are places now, Havana, interestingly enough, where they produce 35 to 40% of their food in the urban core. The ability to do that, and more are getting creative. Instead of saying we'll only grow on flat land, people are putting in rooftop gardens. People are putting in window boxes. People are putting in growing trellises to produce more and more food in an urban context. That is the way we need to go. I've already mentioned planting trees because we have in urban areas what's called a heat island effect, which is that all of the pavement around gets hot. The trees help to shade that and cool it down. They're absolutely essential. And I think to the young people who are here, make a resolve that you will plant a tree every year for the rest of your life. That's the kind of demand that's required. Waste. You know, we live in a culture where the average consumer good we acquire, 80% of it becomes waste within a period of 2 weeks. That includes all the packaging, all of that material. We need to figure out a way of taking waste out of the waste stream. Now, we in British Columbia approached that in a very unique way. We said we're going to begin banning items from the landfill. And we're going to make people, when they buy these items, whether it's a glass bottle or a tin can or an aluminum can or a tire or a battery or what have it, pay a deposit. And when they have used that product and bring it back, and that includes electric goods as well, they get back that deposit, and it's the producer who is responsible for safely disposing of those products. Now, 93% of products that pay the deposit are returned and reclaimed to get the money back. And that reduced our waste in a matter of 5 years by 50%. And that extended, obviously, the life of our landfill. And we capped the landfill to gather the methane gases there. And began to convert it into energy that was sold into the grid, take the heat from the energy and pump it into greenhouses, take the CO2 from burning it and pump it into greenhouses to help stimulate growth. A closed circuit system. These are the things that are part of the innovation of the future. Liquid waste. There are jurisdictions in North America now that are experimenting with the growing of algae, taking the waste and growing algae. Algae doubles its mass every 2 days, and you can create biofuels from that algae. So you take something that is a waste product and turn it into a good, useful product. Energy production. We need to produce much more solar power. And Architecture 2030 has shown us in North America that if we were to simply use the south-facing roofs of buildings and houses and the south-facing walls, we could create enough solar power to meet all of our needs. And if that's possible in North America, think what's possible in Africa. And I understand that it's sometimes difficult, given national jurisdictions, to enter the energy market. I say be bold. Try it. We created in Vancouver our own energy utility. And we actually started by taking the heat of the sewer and converting it into a clean water system to heat neighborhoods for district heating. But you can find ways of generating energy within your city from things that are otherwise wasted. And that is part of the future. So a lot more solar, a lot more wind, a lot more biogas, a lot more geothermal. Geothermal, what do I mean? You build a building, if you put a pipe down into the ground, at a certain point, it's cooler most of the time, and you can bring that cool air up to cool the building rather than using energy. These are the kind of initiatives that are going to transform our energy use patterns. The office environment. Well, we've operated always under the principle that everyone had to come to a venue to work. And this now, in the days of the electronics that we have, the possibility of telecommuting, instead of spending 3 hours on the road coming in and 3 hours on the road going back, getting those who can telecommute to do so would relieve the congestion a great deal. The retail environment. Most retail started with a corner store and then went to a main street and then went to a mall and then went to a big box store. And the new phase that's now coming is buying online. People who are shopping online, and all that retail sector is going to be squeezed out. And the question is, do we just abandon it and leave it as malls, or do we find another purpose and figure out another way to use it? But that change is coming, and that changed economy is going to be the place where smart countries figure out their place in that internet, which also means that we need to educate our young people to the highest level possible. So now, for example, if you go online and you want to buy a leather garment, you don't know where you're buying it from. You may well be buying it from Mumbai in India. So there's a whole marketing scheme of things that can be produced in the locale and then shipped to the user. So again, educate young people. Make it absolutely sure that young people have the highest skills and knowledge to be able to work into this new economy. I say to cities and subnational governments, look for local services and revenues that you can accumulate locally. What do I mean? Well, in every city, there are lamp standards. Those lamp standards could have a solar panel on the top. They could be Wi-Fi hotspots to make your entire city Wi-Fi accessible. Make your city smart. It's not rocket science, it's the new way. Join with other cities, C40, ICLEI, other subnational governments, the R20, work together with them because that's the best peer-to-peer learning environment you can possibly have. To learn from somebody else what they're doing and learn how to apply it in your local context. Make sure local voices are heard at the national level, particularly now as we go into the negotiations in Bonn on the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and as we go into Lima, but most importantly, as we go into Paris. We have to have an agreement in Paris. Cities, subnational governments have to drive the need for that agreement. If you love this planet, now more than ever,